Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our last and final workshop for SwiftSchool. Today, we're going to be doing project 3. And if you're following along on 100 Days of Swift, that's project 4. It's called Better Rest. I'm Lorelei, and you guys can introduce yourselves.
Mark.
Yeah, and we're going to be leading this workshop this week. Hi, welcome. Okay. So let's get into it. As per usual, the sign-in link is the same, and the link to the slides and the link to the Discord are also the same. Let us know if you need any help getting any of these resources. Okay, so as mentioned, this is our final workshop of our series SwiftSchool, where we're teaching you guys mobile development through Swift. Our project this week is Better Rest. Just a little overview of what we're going to be going over. We're going to be covering basically what our project is going to be doing, what type of app we're going to be building, and we're going to be going over the necessary skills and concepts you need to know in order to implement it. And then at the end, we're going to do a quick little demo so that you guys can actually build out this app and see how it works. Okay, starting with a project overview of what we're doing this week, Better Rest. So Better Rest is a mobile development app that's designed to help coffee drinkers get a good night's sleep. We're going to be asking them 3 different questions. So 1, when do they want to wake up? 2, roughly how many hours of sleep do they want? And 3, how many cups of coffee do they typically drink per day? And then using the data that we get from the users, that door is, yeah, hopefully they'll find their way to the other door. Okay, awesome. Hi. Oh, hey, Jeff. Okay, so using these 3 questions and the data we get from user input, we're going to calculate the ideal bedtime, and hopefully that'll help all of us, in CS, we could all use a little bit more sleep, and then people that drink coffee as well. So yeah, we can see this in sort of some real world use. Okay, so now that we've gone over the project, we're going to go over a couple of concepts. So the first one that we're going to be needing to implement this specific app is called a stepper. And no, I'm not talking about the little exercise steppers that you'll use in the gym to get your steps in. I'm talking about a way of letting users enter numbers. So Swift UI actually has 2 different ways of letting users input numbers. We've got a slider like we have here at the top and a stepper here on the bottom. You've probably seen these if you have an iPhone, and you've probably used these in many of your applications. So we're actually going to be learning how to use the stepper that you'll see today. The reason why we're using the stepper instead of the slider is because the stepper allows us to have more precise numbers. So you can do whole numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and not some weird scalar numbers like 0.1227, whatever. So yeah, with steppers, this is basically a pre-built type from Apple iOS, and you can work with any kind of number type, integers, doubles, etc. And we're going to be going over the different values that this object specifically has. So the first parameter that it has is called value. It allows us to bind stepper to a variable. Now, if you've attended our previous workshops in Swift, you'll remember or you'll recall that we have private variables that we can define using the @state syntax. So this first line, @state private variable sleep amount, 8 hours, because that's how long people normally sleep. And then when we use the stepper object or implementation, we can use the keyword stepper and we can insert the parameters. The first one being what we want it to be titled, and then the second one being value, like I mentioned. We can use value to bind that private variable we had to the actual stepper object. And when you do that, it's going to show some sort of number on your screen. You don't have to follow along with us right now because we will be going through an in-depth demo, but just to give you a sort of preview, it's going to show you this really long number with probably a lot of zeros because it is going to be stored as a double. And then you can use the you can tap the plus or minus icons that we saw earlier to step it upwards or downwards. And for default steppers, good thing to know is that they're limited only by their range of their type. And since doubles can store very large numbers, we can store a lot of numbers in this stepper. So you could potentially increment it to a really high number if you wanted. Which is why this next parameter in is really important because it allows us to specify that range. So if you only want them to be able to step through numbers 4 through 12, this is the syntax that you would use to do that. And then finally, we have our last parameter, which is step, which allows us to change how far we move the value each time we each time we tap the plus or the minus icon. So if you want it to go up in increments of 0.25, say like 15 minutes, which is a fourth of the hour, the step icon or the step parameter is what we'll use so that we can increment it by 0.25 or decrement it by 0.25 each time rather than by whole numbers. And then the last thing that we're going to be going over here isn't necessarily a parameter, but it allows us to format the number. Remember how earlier I was talking about how when we first put out the double, it's going to have a lot of zeros. Formatted, this syntax just cuts off all those zeros, so it looks nicer. Okay, so that's stepper. And then we're going to also really quickly go over date picker and date. And no, I'm not talking about the fruit, and I'm not talking about the thing that CS majors might find even more stressful than coding. I'm talking about dates and date pickers, the objects that are created by Apple iOS. So date picker is a dedicated picker type that can be bound to a date property. And date is the Apple's dedicated type for working with dates. So when you're using your calendar app or anything that involves dates, this is what we're talking about in the back end. So to use this, we're going to bind it again with a state property similar to how we did with the stepper. So you're just going to declare it as a date picker object. And then we can please enter date as what's going to be on it. And then selection is what we can use to bind wake up to this private variable to the date picker thing. Another cool thing about date picker and date is that you'll see when we're doing the demo later that it's going to have a lot of different labels. It's going to have a lot of information. It's going to have the date, the month, the year, the hours, the minutes, and you might not want all of that data. You might think it looks a little bit cluttered or a little bit ugly. So you can actually hide it using labels hidden. And that's what that will do. And then we also have another parameter called displayed components. As I was mentioning about having all of that data up front with month, day, year, and then hour, minutes, you can actually decide what options your users should see. So by using .date, you can specify only the displayed components being month, day, and year. And then by using .hour, minute, you can specify just using hour and minute components. And that's the syntax for that right there in the highlighted box. And then we also have another parameter called in, works the same as it does for stepper, which allows us to specify the range in which users can select dates. And then the keyword that we're going to be using for our project today, but it changes depending on what range you want, is going to be .now ... And what this basically allows us to do is it lets the user select any date from now up until any date into the future, but none from the past. It's similar to the for ... 12, except this one doesn't have an end bound, so you can do basically any date infinitely into the future. So you might be asking why we're telling you about these pre-built objects, and that's because working with dates can be hard. For example, say you wanted to hard code it. Say you have three variables, that are now, tomorrow, and range. Sure, if you're building your own app, you could define them yourself. So you could be like, oh, dates right now. Tomorrow is going to be adding 86,400 seconds, and then the range will be now until tomorrow. And sure, you could do that, but we run into a couple of complications with that. So for example, in the real world, whether you're living in different countries or you're going around the globe, or different countries have different time systems and daylight savings, sometimes if you hard code or use those values by yourself, some days are going to have 23 hours, other days are going to have 25 hours, you have to account for leap seconds and all of these different complications that are just going to feed into making our job as developers harder. So what's awesome about Apple and Swift specifically as an iOS language is that they already have all of those complications depending on the user, where they are globally, and time ranges and all that stuff built into date picker and date, which is why we're teaching you about this. So the key takeaway is that with these things that we're teaching you about today, you don't have to manually calculate dates or everything down to the second. You can just rely on the Apple frameworks that already exist, which make our jobs as programmers and developers a lot easier. So things like time zones, regional formats, all of that already dealt with by Apple. Okay, so now that we've gone over those key concepts, the project goals for today with the Better Rest app is that we're going to be using dates in 3 different ways. We're going to use it to set a default wake-up time. We're going to be using it to read hour and minute from date picker. And then we're also going to be using it to display a nicely formatted bedtime. Very simple, and we'll show you guys how to do all of those. For the first one, creating a default wake time, we are just going to establish some basic baseline variables like components.hour and component.minute, and then date, which is going to be using the date functionality to grab the current time. And also this little double question mark .now, it's basically some sort of ternary operator, and it's going to either select the date that is the default value, which we're setting up here, or it's going to select now from date. Again, just as review, date components is going to let us read and write specific parts of the date. And then this, again, question mark dot now syntax is going to return an optional date just in case it fails. The second part for reading the hour and the minute is going to allow us to extract and unwrap the date information. So date picker will give us the year, the month, and the time zone. But for example, if we only want hour and minute, which is probably more relevant for our app, which is dealing with sleep, we can extract and unwrap that information using this syntax right here, which is .hour, .minute in the brackets. Again, you don't have to understand why it's that. We're just telling you now, so it's easier for you when you're building it later. And then finally, the last part, formatting dates and times. After we get that information from the date components, we're going to format it using the format parameter. So if we just wanted the time, we can use .datetime, .hour, .minute. But say for some other app that you're building in the future that's not better rest, you wanted to use day, month, year, you can use that syntax as well. We're not going to be putting it in a text icon, but we will be putting it in our steppers and date pickers. But this here in the box is what's going to be relevant for today. And a little fun fact before we finish off this section is that iOS will automatically format the date order according to the user's country's preference. So for example, some countries have month, day, year, some countries have day, month, year. So Apple already factors that in based on the user's device, so we don't even have to worry about that. So it's super, super simple, super easy, not intimidating at all. And this should give you basically most of the information you know, linked up with another part that we're going to be covering as well to build this Better Rest app. So yeah. And then, yeah, again, same syntax from before, formatted, allows us to pass in configuration options for how we want different pieces of data to be formatted. Okay, so dates can be tricky, but the main idea is Apple has provided us with a stack of helpers to make them easier to deal with. And if you learn to use them well, you'll write less code and it'll be better and more understandable. Okay, with that, I'm going to pass it off so that we can go over machine learning.
All right. All right, so for our app later on, we're going to be using some machine learning ML to actually predict your eventual sleep time. But Mark's going to go over the actual prediction part, but I'm just going to go over the background. So later on, when you guys create your own apps and are using your own MLs, like how do you actually create that and all that? All right, so Apple has two machine learning or has made machine learning very simple via core ML and create ML. So these two things help you actually use ML in your app. So core ML is actually going to be in your content view file, and you're going to use that to use any ML model you make and then make predictions. Versus create ML, you're actually creating that model based on your past data or yeah. So basically create ML is training the model and core ML is using the model. All right, so for our project though, since we're using Better Rest, obviously our ML model is going to be based on sleep data. So we're going to grab patterns from that. If you guys wanted to start from scratch and create your own ML, you can go to the GitHub and find that CSV file. You can also find it through 100 Days of Swift, but you don't need to do that. But if you wanted to do that, you could. But yeah, so in general, when you create your own ML, you can feed in whatever data you'd like. It's all totally up to you. And for this one, we're using that .csv file from the 100 Days of Swift. All right. So real quick, what does Core ML do again? Like I said, it's the model that does predictions. So what it does, it handles training tasks. So it can recognize images, sounds, motions, all that. So it makes predictions for those. Yeah. But with our Core ML, it's going to be tabular regression, which sounds scary. It's not. I'm going to break it down for you guys. Tabular regression is literally just analyzing an Excel sheet. So it takes in a large spreadsheet of data. So Excel, Google Sheets, you have like a column of input or before and after, something like that. Just a regular Excel sheet. Analyzes it, and then returns the correlation between the values. So why does X turn into Y? It's kind of just sums it up into like a function. And that's what tabular regression is. It's quite simple, and you don't really have to understand how it analyzes it because that's Create ML's job. You don't have to do that. So yeah, so start for ML total, train the ML via Create ML. So that's like the tabular regression stuff. And then you can actually use that ML to make predictions using Core ML. So in our project later on, we'll see that Mark uses Core ML to predict your predicted sleep, wake up time or something. Okay, so if you wanted to create your own ML, you're going to go to Xcode and you'll see Open Developer Tool at the top of the setting stuff. And then you can go to Open Developer Tools and create ML. So from there, you'll get a pop-up where it's going to just give you a bunch of templates. Again, so Apple has made it very simple. You can choose which type of data you're putting in. So if you're using an Excel sheet, you're going to use tabular regression. So now you can just click through next, name it whatever you'd like, depending on what app you're building. For ours, it would be Better Rest. And then that's pretty much it. You've like almost made that model. Like you don't have to do much else. So now that you've created your model, it's blank, it has nothing, it doesn't know anything, it's like a baby. So you have to actually input your data file. So you're just gonna, under training data, you're just gonna select the CSV file. And now what that's gonna do, it's gonna read in everything and understand what's going on. It's gonna analyze the relationship. But now that we have all that data in, it knows what the data is, we need to figure out what Create ML does with that data. So here you'll see the drop down called target, and that's just going to be what we want it to predict. So yeah, that's just like when you ask it later on, what is it going to give you? For ours, or we'll see is our target will be actual sleep. And the features is like the opposite of that. Those are all the variables that lead to your prediction. So that's going to be all the other 3 variables, which is like wake up and coffee amounts, all that stuff. There's also a feature that you most likely will not use too much, which is called algorithm. Leave it as automatic. You can leave it as automatic, especially now as a beginners. But later you can choose change the algorithm type based on your data and make it better suited. You'll see like types like linear regression, all that type of stuff. But automatic will just like it'll guess what's the best type for your data, which is good enough for now. And then you can just train it. And depending on your data, it might take a while. But for our intensive purposes, if you wanted to do it, it would take like a couple seconds. It's very, very quick. And that's it. That's like you've created your ML, like it knows the relationship. So what we kind of gathered from that is machine learning is really nothing. It's literally just statistics. You're just analyzing data. That's all it is, especially right now with Create ML. It's nothing, it sounds scary, but it doesn't have to be. So you guys can make your own ML like right now. So yeah. Another thing to know when you're on that Create ML pop-up, you can go to the evaluation tab and actually see all those statistics, which will further prove to you that this is nothing but statistics. And when you go to your output file, you'll actually see physically how the Create ML took your data, like which is numbers and inputs and outputs, and turn it into the relationship. So you'll see that if this was your Excel file before, it's going to have, I don't know, maybe it's like 2000 megabytes. And after you can see that your new ML model, it's going to have the data. It's going to just be a few hundred bytes. You can see that it's just the relationship now. It doesn't matter what your inputs before are or the after. All it cares about is this relationship. And that's what you actually need when you use it. When you input new data, it just follows the arrow. So that's why ML is quite useful. You don't have to know all that background and all that. All right, so Core ML, actually implementing that, using that arrow, using that correlation. Mark's gonna actually implement it and you'll be able to see the full thing. But if you make your own ML, the way to link it to your Xcode project is you simply just drag and drop it into your Xcode project and is literally just there. Make sure you tick the file that has your target, but that's it. You don't really have to do much else. It's in there and you'll see a class is automatically made with the same name as your ML. You can rename it now if you'd like. You don't have to, but it's up to you. And the only thing, the last step, other than dragging and dropping it in, is when you go to your Content Swift file, make sure you write import core ML at the top. So that's going to actually allow you to use it. And even if you don't import it, it's probably going to give you a big error once you start using it, which will remind you. So it's, again, very quite simple. Just follow these steps and you guys can get your own ML. And yeah, so this is the portion that would give you an error if you don't have core ML imported. So again, Mark is going to go more into detail with these, but this is kind of the general syntax you would start with. You would create a model, and this sleep calculator, that's the name of our create ML file or model. And so now it's saying, you're basically letting your machine know that use this ML and create a model from that. And then later, when you have a prediction, you can use that model and prediction, very useful terminology there. And it's going to use that correlation we found earlier to give you a predicted sleep amount or whatever it is. So yeah, we can see earlier I was talking about features are the other three variables: wake time, estimated sleep, and coffee we drink. You can see that it over here in the parameter list, it tells you wake, estimated sleep, coffee. So it's just gonna, that's how you can see the relationship between your core ML and create ML and core ML. A little aside, if you're wondering what the little try here was, that's just in case your prediction fails, which is not really going to happen most likely. It's just asking, hey, if our prediction fails, throw an exception so we don't like crash and something crazy happens. But that's it. There's you don't need to use a try, but it's just good practice to do that. But yeah, that's for create ML, and we're gonna actually implement our project now with Mark. So let's welcome him.
I think I'll start on this first, and then I'll start. Okay. Hi guys. Thank you, Soumya, for the ML introduction. So now let's actually get to coding. So in the Discord in SwiftSchool General, I sent a GitHub link, and go ahead and click that. So click the Discord link, and it'll lead you to something that looks a little bit like this. And you're going to click the three dots at the top right, and you see that thing that says download. Click that. So we're going to download it, and I'll just wait. So I guess raise your hand if you have it downloaded. Okay, awesome. That's good. Then I guess we can continue. So now you need to launch Xcode, and we're going to click create new Xcode project. And it'll lead you to something that looks like this. And you're just going to click iOS at the top here, then click app, and then you're going to click next. So not too many buttons to click, but that'll get us started on the project. And then you can just name it whatever you want. The actual project is Better Sleep. So I named it Better Sleep, and then I put the organization identifier as SwiftSchool. And then once I guess everyone gets that ready, then we can start with the demo. So raise your hand if you've created the new project. Awesome. Thank you guys. Okay. You'll still have a little bit of time because I need to swap the screen share. But share. Let's go. Share. Okay. Looks like it's there. I can see it on Lorelei's computer. Awesome. Okay, great. So this is what it should look like for you guys. I'll wait a little bit just to make sure everyone can see my stuff. And, oh, okay. Awesome. Okay. So if you guys remember I'm assuming you guys are all at the same screen as me, right? Are you guys at the same screen? Yes. Thanks, Max. Okay. So if you guys remember what Lorelei introduced is we're making an app that will take in 3 user inputs. It'll take in the day that we want to wake up, how many hours of sleep that we want, and how much coffee we're going to drink. So let's start off with making the variables for those. So first we're going to do a wake up variable. So at state private var wake up. And that'll equal date.now, if you remember what Lorelei talked about with dates. And now we'll do another variable for sleep amount. Oh, oops, var sleep amount. And we'll just set it to 8 for now, because that's how long you should be sleeping. And then private var coffee amounts. And we can just set that to 1 for now, actually. So that just gets us started on our variables, our cheeky little private variables. And so right now, what they start you with is just this default little hello world in a globe. We need to actually not have that. So let's just delete all this stuff here. This is what's being shown on the right. So I'm just going to delete that. So we just have our var body sum view. And we're going to go ahead and make a navigation view. And we'll go slowly here. And then we'll do a VStack. That opens like that. And then let's just get some text on here. So we'll do, when do you want to wake up? And you'll see it kind of showing right here as you work, which is pretty cool. So now we have, when do you want to wake up here? So if you remember what Lorelei talked about with date pickers, first I'm going to use a cooler font, headline. Oh, okay, that looks so much cooler. Okay, so we're gonna use the date picker. So first, what we'll want is just some text. Please enter time. And then if you remember the selection parameter, it'll be wake up, our variable up here. So boom, it just made a date picker for us. And if you click on it, it'll show the date and the time, which is pretty awesome. And you can just fiddle around with that. Oh, that's so cool. Okay. So, if you remember what Lorelei talked about, we have a lot of things here that we don't really need. So we don't exactly need like the date and the year and everything. So we can actually just go ahead and do displayed components. I think it was hour and minute. So there, now it just shows the time, which right now is 7 p.m. Awesome. Okay, now I'm just gonna go ahead and do, and then now let's get the desired amount of sleep. So text desired amount of sleep. So that's the variable right here, sleep amount that we made earlier. And you'll see it shows up right here, the desired amount of sleep, which is pretty awesome. And we'll keep the same font, headline, to keep it consistent. So now we have that. And we're going to use a stepper, which Lorelei talked about. So let's reference our sleep amount variable, sleep amount. And let's also add hours to the end there. And then we need the actual value. So value is the sleep amount variable right here. And there it is. We have a little stepper here with sleep amount. When you click minus, it goes up an hour, and down an hour, and then plus is up an hour, which is awesome. But what's with all these crazy amounts of zeros, bro? We don't need that, right? So we're just gonna add dot formatted at the end of this. And it just shows 8 hours now, which looks a lot more pleasant on the eyes. And for desired amount of sleep, let's say we just like went on and on and on and on and on forever. That doesn't make sense. We're not going to be getting 40 hours of sleep. So if you remember what Lorelei talked about, we can use the in keyword for kind of like a range. I think it's 4 dots. No, it's 3 dots. So now that we have that, we cannot go below 4 hours and we cannot go above 12 hours. So that's like reasonable, right? We're not going to have like -4 hours of sleep or like 1,000,000 hours of sleep, because that's not going to happen. And then we also don't want to go in increments of 1. So if we want to do like 8.5 hours, we're going to use the step keyword that Lorelei talked about. And we're just going to step 0.25, for example. And now when we do this, it goes 8.25, 8.5, 8.75. Awesome. That's so much better. And now we just have to get our last input. So that would be coffee. So we can just say daily coffee intake. Coffee intake. And then we'll also do the dot font headline like we have been doing. And I believe it's also a stepper for this because we're just going to be incrementing. But we're going to use a ternary operator because we want to, well, first we'll do this. And then, so let's say coffee amount equals 1. We're not going to say 1 cups. We're going to say 1 cup, right? But if we have 2 cups or like 1,000,000 cups, we're going to say 1,000,000 cups or 2 cups. So how do we do that? We use a ternary operator. So we're going to say 1 cup. So if coffee amount equals 1, we'll do 1 cup. And then otherwise, we're going to do, we're going to reference the coffee amount variable, coffee amount cups. So if it were not 1, then it would say that many cups. And then we'll actually use a value here. So $ coffee amount. And then let's do a range again. We'll just say 1 to 20 cups, because you're not going to be doing -1 cups. And you're not going to, hopefully not going to be doing like 1,000 cups of coffee. So now we have our stepper for coffee and our stepper for desired amount of sleep. Wonderful. This is really good. And now let's, how are we going to actually calculate the bedtime? So like the actual functionality of the app. So let's just go outside of the body here, and we'll just make a function calculate bedtime. Oops. Okay, so now we have a function there. And let's also fill up this area at the top here because it's looking a little empty. Let's go ahead outside of the V stack and let's make a dot navigation bar title. Better rest, because that's the name of our, and I don't know why it's not showing up there. It showed up for a second. Hold on. Better rest. Let's figure this out. Oh, there we go. Okay, awesome. And then we'll do a toolbar that will actually call our function right here, the calculate bedtime function. And it will be a button that says calculate, and the action for the button will be calculate bedtime. So now you'll see our button up here, calculate. We can click it. It doesn't do anything yet because calculate bedtime is empty, but okay, now we're getting somewhere. We got this. We can click a time for when we want to wake up, and we can enter a desired amount of sleep and how much coffee we take a day. So let's get into actually using ML. So if you guys remember the thing that I made you download on GitHub, hopefully you have that at the ready. So what we're going to do is go ahead and just drag it into your file system right here. So literally just like, okay, I don't think you guys can see it, but like I would just drag what's it called, sleep calculator.ml model right here, and then bang, and then it'll say copy files to destination. You're just going to click finish and it'll show up right here. So I'll wait a little bit to make sure you guys get that, but let's actually go into what this even means. So this is all the stuff that Soumya talked about. Right here, it says model class sleep calculator. that's the automatically generated model class name, because that's the name of the file. And if we click predictions right here, we'll see the input and the output that we get. So this is like actually for our calculating. So we're going to get the wake time, the estimated sleep, and the amount of coffee, and then it'll output the time that we should be going to bed. So I'll wait a little bit to make sure you guys got that. But let's go ahead back to content view. So back to where we were before. And let's import core ML way at the top here. Syntax error. Oh, never mind. Okay. So make sure you have core ML imported, because that is an external library that we're going to be using. And now we can go ahead and get started with actually making the calculate bedtime. So we're going to be using machine learning. So let's do a do catch. Do catch. So this is just kind of going to set up everything. And then we're going to start. Okay, so let config equal ML model configuration. And then we'll do let model equal try sleep calculator, because that's the name of the model. Try sleep calculator. And then sleep calculator will have configuration config. Awesome. Okay. No errors. Wonderful. Now we are going to get our date components. So we'll do let components equal date dot calendar dot current dot date components and then if you remember the dot hour dot minute in these little brackets here, and then from wake up, so that is our input, wake up input. And then we're going to do let hour equal components dot hour, and then let minute equal components dot minute. So we have to do a little bit of safeguarding. So this is called a nil coalesce. So those little question marks mean that if components.hour give us like a nil value, then we'll default to 0. And then let's do that the same for minute. And then since it's in seconds, we'll do times 60 twice here, and then times 60 once here. So that will give us the correct minute and hour. And then we'll do let prediction equal try model dot prediction. And then our input for this is wake. So if you remember when I looked at the sleep calculator here, we have our predictions here, and then our input is wake, estimated sleep, and coffee. So we're basically going to be filling that out right now. So we'll do wake is the double version of, I believe it's wake up. No, it's hour plus minute. Then next is estimated sleep. So estimated sleep is going to be also a double. No, it's just gonna be sleep amount. So this up here. And then last we'll do coffee. So coffee equals coffee amount. And then let's make that a double coffee amount. I don't know what's going on here. Unexpected error occurred. Interesting. Okay, so now that we have that, I think I'm just having technical difficulties here, but I'll just, oh, it's back. Awesome. Okay, so now that we have the prediction, so that basically means like the output that the model will give us. How are we going to actually show the output to the user. So we're gonna do this by using an alert. First, I'm gonna make another variable here. Let sleep time equal wake up minus prediction. Yeah, prediction. Dot actual sleep, which is the output, if you remember. So like right here, predictions. The output is called actual sleep. So that's what we're referencing here by doing prediction dot actual sleep. And then let's get started with the alert. So when we have an alert, we're gonna need 3 variables. So first we're gonna need the alert's title. We're gonna set these to be empty strings for now. So it'll equal just an empty string. We'll need the alert's message. Var message equals blank. And then we'll have a Boolean for if the alert is showing, and we'll just set it to false for now. So now let's actually start. Let's start by filling out the catch. So if there's an error with our alert or with our machine learning model, then we're going to make the alert title be error. So alert title equals error, or you can make it whatever message you want. And then we'll have the alert message be there was an error calculating your bedtime. And then outside of this do catch, we will have showing alert equal to true because the alert's being shown. But now let's actually set up the functionality for showing the real bedtime, assuming that it does not error. So let's just set alert title equal your ideal bedtime is ... And then we'll have the alert message be the actual time. So it'll be sleep time dot formatted and then date dot omitted and then time shortened, because we don't really need to show the date. We only really want to show like you should be going to bed at like 10 p.m. or 12 a.m. Well, I'll actually show it to you guys in a bit. But well, now that we have the actual function here that returns what we want, we need to actually show it on the app. So let's make a dot alert here, dot alert with, oops, let's remove that. Dot alert with alert title, and then is presented is showing alert. So that is the Boolean that we made. And then this is the title of the alert. And then I believe we want to make brackets here that will give us a button. And then we want to show the actual message. So we'll have the button be, oops. We'll have the button just say, okay. And then we'll have message here as the message as text alert message. Okay. So, oops, I have to actually show that here. And then this. Okay. No more errors. Now, let's test it. So let's say I want to wake up at 10 a.m., 10:15 a.m. and I want to get 8 hours of sleep. And let's say I'm like a madman and I drink 18 cups of coffee. I'll calculate it. My ideal bedtime is 9:57. Awesome. Okay. But right now, our UI looks a little bit chopped. So we're gonna make it look better. But let's take a victory here. We got the actual alert to show up, and the ML model is returning us a working time. So you'll see if I went down to 10 cups, it's 11. If I went down to 4 cups, it's 1:11 a.m. And if I went down to 1 cup, my ideal bedtime is 1:53. Okay, awesome. So let's get started on making this actually look better. So we're gonna only really change the stuff that's going on in here, but one kind of annoying thing that you might have noticed with the app is that when you start it, it sets your time, your desired wake up time to be what time it is right now. So before I edited it to be 10:15, it would say 7:18 p.m., which is what time it is right now. So that's a little annoying. Let's set like a default to make it be like 7 a.m. or something. So let's make a static var default time. No, default wake time. That's a little more specific. So this will return a date, and let's start. So var components equals date components, and then we'll have components dot hour equals 7 because we want to do 7 a.m. And then, oh, okay, that's exactly what we wanted, I think. So basically what it'll do is date dot now. So basically 7 a.m. and it'll return the wait, from components, and then oops. Okay. So it'll return calendar current date from components. So it'll return 7 a.m. And if for some reason that errors, it'll return date dot now, which is what wake up is right now. So we're going to change this value to be default wake time. And that's just going to help us out. So next time that this reloads, it, there we go, 7 a.m. So no more having to switch from AM to PM if I'm trying to like calculate my bedtime at 9 p.m. or something. So now we're going to make it look better. So first, we're going to want to actually replace the VStack with a form. So that one simple line change, you'll see it looks way better right now. And it's all kind of held in one form. So, but you'll notice it's kind of not clear like what parts go with what. So like when do you want to wake up? Then there's a divider, then 7 a.m. Then there's another divider, then desired amount of sleep, another divider, 8 hours. We want to make it so that desired amount of sleep and 8 hours and the stepper are like smushed together and really, really close together. So it's very clear what is connected to what. So first, what we can do is we can just make a VStack for each of those three inputs. So we can do a VStack with alignment leading, dot leading, oops, and then spacing 0. And go ahead and just like copy paste this thing because we're going to be using this 3 times for the different input. So first I'll just copy paste. Well, I'll drag it. I'll drag all this stuff here and make it look a little better. Bang, 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 bang. And you'll see right here, when do you want to wake up in 7 a.m. are now in one little box, which just looks way better. And then we're really just going to rinse and repeat, do the same thing with desired amount of sleep and the stepper that is attached to it. And we'll just put it there, make the code look prettier. And then, I don't know what happened here. And then you'll see it happen here. Desired amount of sleep and 8 hours are now in their own little component. Looks way more clear. And then we're just going to do it again. So copy paste, and then drag this all over here. Bang, 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 boom. And then there you go. So it looks way better. Everything is like kind of clear. And let's say I want to wake up at, I don't know, 12 a.m., 1 a.m., and I want 10 hours of sleep, and I take 10 cups of coffee, I should be going to bed at noon. So yeah, that is better rest. I hope you guys learned a lot about Swift UI using Core ML and all these steppers and date pickers. Thank you guys for coming. And if you have any questions, let me know. But I hope you guys enjoyed. And yeah, now you have an app. And thank you, Lorelei. Thank you, Soumya, for doing a great job presenting. I'll stop the sheet.
And let us know if you guys have any questions. I'm gonna stop the recording.